Okay, we are live. Good morning. This is Attorney Vincent Davis, and this is The Secret: How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm joined by two co-hosts today, Miss G, Georgette Truin. Miss G, how are you this morning?
Just dandy. Wonderful.
Good. And we're also joined by Mr. Darren Guai. Darren, how are you this morning?
I'm wonderful, Mr. Davis. What a great day to be alive, right?
Absolutely. You know, if this was
And I
football,
hate both of you right now, just FYI.
Darren, if this
That's all
was
I have
football,
to say.
Darren,
Yes,
if
sir.
this was football season, would you be watching football on Sundays?
You know what? No, I won't anymore. My father died, and when my father died, that was where me and him, we had season tickets to the Patriots and all that stuff. So when he passed away a few years ago, I've cut myself right out of the football world. I don't know why, but yeah. Otherwise, normally, if this was pre-dad dead, you don't even touching me on Sunday. Not even close to phone calls. House full of people, the whole nine.
Mhm.
But now, yeah, you have the number to this king, so you can definitely get me.
Are you a fan of Brady?
I once was.
Not anymore?
I don't know what the interim stuff with the Bob Kraft family and the Belichicks and stuff. I'm not that privy. But I think for everything that they did for that quarterback coming up and giving him the opportunity that they gave him and the way that he's treated that New England organization, I don't know. Like he definitely got put in a position that he should have never had. And he should be thankful that Drew Bledsoe got hurt. He should be thankful for the Belichicks and them to give him the opportunity. He should be thankful for them just to be drafted. So for him to kind of cold shoulder and make mockery of New England and things like that, like he's done in Tampa. I mean, he's a great quarterback. I mean, he's the best ever. He's the GOAT. There's no quarterback that will be better than him. But, I'm not a football fan. I'm a New England Patriots fan. There's big, So
You never asked me about sports, Vincent.
Do you have static on the line, Darren?
I heard something clicked, I thought. My picture got bigger all of a sudden, too. I don't know. Now all of a sudden, I'm next to you on the picture.
He's going to make it happen, believe me.
Mr. Davis, I'll call you after the show at this number.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Jamie Clark is watching on one of the Facebook platforms. Good morning, Jamie. How are you? Good morning to you. Jamie says, much love in light of prayers. On YouTube, we have, is it Sierra Jade? Good morning, Miss G, Vince, and guest. The guest is a co-host, actually. His name
Now
is
he is.
Darren.
They're not used to Darren being here.
And Jamie, Miss G and the gang.
Woo! Point one for us.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
All right.
It's going to be Mr. D and the boys now. It's the way this show's starting to look like.
Wait, you need to make a banner like that, Misty and the boys.
Hey, Darren, I want to talk about an issue. Miss G's going to law school. What do you think of that?
You know what? I think that's going to be great for her. It's going to give you and I a lot more time to grow together, because she's going to have to definitely be off and studying. No, I think it's great. She has a lot of love.
Courses.
She has a lot of love for this. She does. She fights hard, and I know she works hard for you. She says, and I see her working all the time, and she's on the phone and so on. So I do know that she does do that, and she has a lot of love for this, and she wants to make a difference. So let's. She deserves that shot to make a difference.
Thank you.
When I went to law school, I didn't know anything about what I was getting into, and one of the hardest parts about law school is your first year, getting acclimated, learning how to think like a lawyer and a judge, and which is not normal. It's not normal thinking. It's totally different. And that was the hardest part to me. And then, of course, the courses, contract, torts. Like, what's a tort? Real property, like civil procedure. What's that about? Criminal law was, legal research and writing, all that stuff. And it was all new to me. And it was such a struggle for me that first year. Um, Flash forward decades. My nephew, about 4 years ago, who was in the army, he was in intelligence, and he worked. I think he worked at the Pentagon. Anyway, he tells me, "Hey, Uncle Vince, I want to go to law school, um, and be a lawyer just like you." And he had never mentioned this to me in all of the years that I've known him. They live back east. And well, I said, well, this is what you have to do. And I gave him a plan of how to succeed in law school, because you really have to figure out what's going on before you go to law school. And after his first year, he implemented the plan. And after his first year, he went to Howard Law School. He finished number one in his class, and he got an offer and a scholarship from Harvard Law School to go to Harvard. Um, Despite my advice for him to take that offer, he didn't take it, and he finished his second year at Howard Law School in D.C., number two in his class, and then in his third year he finished number one in his class, and he got out. I mean, he passed the bar back there where he is, and he got a job making a gazillion dollars. His original plan when he wanted to go to law school was he wanted to come to California and work with me.
Oh.
I think that's changed. But
No, but there's got to be. Listen, it's not about the dollars. I mean,
right.
you are known as one of the best in the business about fighting these people. So that comes with its pros and its cons, but it's got to be a good feeling to have. Like, you are one of the only ones that are out fighting the evil that's against these average day Joes that are getting their kids stolen. So I mean, that just says that's volumes over cash, man. For sure.
I think one of the things that I Miss G introduced me to a guy, an attorney, who's really big on TikTok fighting CPS in New York. And one of the things I think that I'd like to do is I'd like to meet and talk to other attorneys, from all the different states, and try to form some type of network.
Yeah.
Many years ago, this is 30 years ago, I met a guy
Whose
here in
idea was that to form a network?
somebody named, I forget her name.
Yeah.
I forget her name. There's somebody brought it up, the idea.
I got you 5 other attorneys from other states, by the way.
Good. Let's do all 50.
I got you 6.
Shut up, Eric. You are being in competition. I hate you right now. You need to talk to Mary after this damn show is over.
Hey, well, look, Jamie says he's an NYC law guy. Jamie, are you
There
a
we
lawyer?
go.
I didn't know that.
No. She's talking about Michael.
Oh, yeah.
She's saying it's an NYC New York law
Okay.
guy. Yeah.
What is Michael's last name?
It's extremely hard to pronounce. Jesus. It's attorney Michael. Last name is this is DISCIOARRO.
Okay. Darren,
Rosario?
have you ever watched any of his social media videos?
Yes, yes.
I have watched a couple of them. I know Miss G's has a good, and she really cares about him and likes him. So yeah, I've watched a couple of him.
I like his pizzazz. I like his fire.
Yeah.
So after we talked, when I first met him, after we talked, a few days later, I contacted someone in New York that I know that's a lawyer that has done the occasional CPS case. He does other stuff mainly, but he, occasionally does CPS. He's always calling me, asking me questions. So I called him and I said, "Hey, have you ever heard of this guy?" He says, "Yeah, everybody's heard of him, in the CPS world. He's a kick-ass attorney." So, I mean, I think this guy, is the real deal. And
He doesn't take older cases, though, Davis.
I'm sorry?
He doesn't take older cases. You do. You have a strategy for all cases. He wouldn't touch it.
Yeah, but that's the whole idea, is to unify and to get the strong points of everybody.
Exactly. Exactly. Let me tell you something that happened like over 30 years ago. I'm a young attorney. My aunt buys a new car. I forget the kind of car it was, but
Dinosaur.
it's not even made anymore. And it turned out to be a lemon. I know that California has some very strict what they call lemon laws. And I searched around and I found a young guy, a young attorney then, 30 years ago, who was specializing in lemon law. And the reason why he was specializing in it is because during law school, he bought a car that was a lemon. So, as part of his project for learning how to be a lawyer, he did his own case. And I think he even took it to trial.
Oh, wow.
And I referred him my aunt's case, and he did a great job for her. And one of the things that he told me was that he had formed a network of lawyers around California that shared information on all the manufacturers' executives, because they would take their depositions. They shared information like discovery. And the funny thing is, like, he'd ask a question in discovery in case A, but his network would ask someone in the network would ask the same question in case Z, and the same manufacturer and the same executive would answer differently under penalty of perjury. Imagine being able to share that kind of information.
Right.
Your discovery tactics, your law and motion tactics, your trial tactics, and it's specifically geared to that manufacturer. It was General Motors or Ford or
Right.
Chrysler and that type of
Like
thing.
for you, for instance, it would be certain prosecutors that you would go up against that are trying against you, or
Right,
to see
right.
how like they would deal with it, or
And I would love to have that type of network, because I've been doing it a long time, but I don't know everything, right? And I'm sure Michael has thought of things that I haven't thought about, and vice
right.
versa. When I first got into juvenile dependency law, CPS law in LA County, I was a court appointed attorney, and they required everyone to have a mentor. They don't require that anymore. And I had a mentor, and the guy now he's a very well known judge in LA County. He doesn't do CPS cases. And I think although he's never told me this, I think that's by choice. But he's never done it. I don't think he's ever done a CPS case as a judge. But he was my mentor. He introduced me to other senior attorneys that did CPS law, and I got to go talk to them, got to go out to lunch with them, pick their brain, that type of thing. And I actually had it was a small, mainly two guys, me and another guy, study group, and we literally talked every night
Mm-hmm.
for an hour or two about strategy, about the law, about just different things. And I think that's what got me,
What is the
so much into strategy, because I was always talking about, it's the kind of thing, you can master anything if you spend, they say, what, 10,000 hours doing it, right? Now, if you
right?
don't spend that time, according to that book, Mastery, you can't master it. But just any human being could master any topic or issue if you spend the time. As it turned out, and I wasn't trying to do that, but it just so happened that that's one of the things that I did. I just kind of fell into it. He and I became friends, and every evening after dinner we would talk for an hour or two. At the time I was married, it used to bug my wife, and he was married, and it used to bug the shit out of his wife.
Right.
Unfortunately, he's deceased. He was only a few years older than me, but he's deceased, and
Yeah.
he was a very, very smart and a very, very good attorney, and he was
See, this
practicing mainly in CPS law.
this is where what's going on with CPS is lacking. The same thing. What we're losing now with what they're doing to the children is we're losing that generational story time. We're losing, like you were saying, your mentor. We're losing the same with our children because the families are gone away. So the families don't get like grandma used to work at the factory sewing shoes, and dad worked 100 hours a week and do this. The story time is not there. So
Right.
like you see the importance of like the mentorship of what you're talking about. Now magnitude that times the children that are losing these grandparents and they're not
Right.
hearing these stories. What kind of people are being created from this? Like
Right.
what effects without a mentor? How do you think your career would have been different if you didn't have a great mentor?
Oh, it would have been nothing.
Are you going to
Basically.
be my mentor?
Yes, I will be your mentor. Hey, I want to answer a question. Kathy Winters, watching on Facebook, says, "Are you talking about Sean McMillan?" First of all, Sean McMillan is SHAWN. Okay, I happen to know Sean, and I wasn't referring to him. Sean is an excellent attorney. He's one of the gurus in the area of civil rights, suing CPS for civil rights violations. Although we do that as well, what we're talking about here today is not suing CPS, it's fighting CPS in CPS cases where they go and take your child and you're trying to get the child back. You know, I haven't talked to Sean in a few years, but he and I are both graduates of the Jerry Spence Trial Lawyers College. And he and I both went to something called the Trojan Horse Trial Method. Went to those seminars. As a matter of fact, I went to those seminars because he recommended it to me. But the last time I talked to him, Sean's never been to a CPS court. He doesn't. He doesn't go and get the child back to you. He'll usually refer you out to someone. But if you have to sue the social worker, he's one of the top guys to do it. And I know that I think he's based in San Diego, and I think he got admitted to the state of Washington, and he's also doing cases I know for sure, in Arizona, maybe Nevada, I'm not sure, but he is not afraid to go into different states to fight CPS for civil rights violations. Stacy says he declined my case. Stacy, I'm sorry to hear that. Um, he is very sought after, and he doesn't. He's one man. He's one man. I think he's got 2 or 3 kids. He's got a wife. He's got things that he does, and he doesn't. Can't work on it 24/7, right? And a lot of people have told me that he's declined the case, but that doesn't mean you don't have a good case or he didn't like your case. It's just that he's busy. I mean, busy.
He tells people he has too many cases. He can't handle another case. He's
Right.
just straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah. Doing a civil rights case, I was just talking to someone this morning about a civil rights case, and they have a great case. Problem is time to pour into the case.
What
And
is the amount of time that you spend? Let's say, like on an average per client per. I know there's a whole bunch of differentials that could be in there, but you would say like per client if you were to say an overall span of a start to finish case, how many man hours do you yourself just put in?
it could on a civil rights case or a CPS case.
Any just a case in general. I'm just trying to get like a
Right.
generalized.
On a civil rights case, you could spend 750 to 1,000 hours per year on a case,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
I mean, and then some of these cases last a couple years.
Right.
Jesus,
Yeah.
that's people think, oh, my rights were violated. It's going to be a slam dunk.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to get millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. As a matter of fact, the defense they have a defense playbook. All right.
Of course.
And they have they have defense associations and networks
Mm-hmm.
where they get together and share information. Just like I was telling you earlier,
Mm-hmm.
they have a defense institute. Okay. And they have a playbook. And the playbook, one of the key defenses is to wear down the parent and the parent's
Money.
attorney.
Yep. Wear down their money, right?
Right. Where they can't afford or don't have the time to prosecute the case.
Mm-hmm.
And then to paper them and to drain their resources.
Right.
That is primarily the number one defense. They're not even talking about whether what the social worker did was right or wrong. They don't
Right.
care. They don't care one way or the other.
Right.
Their job Their job is to make this case go down to this case. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, okay, we're going to have to pay you money, but we don't want to pay you, $5 million. We want to pay you $1 million. We want to pay you 300,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want
Mm-hmm.
to pay you 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's a $5 million case. Well, it's only a $5 million case if you can make it to the finish line
Right.
and convince a judge or a jury at trial. I once did a case for a lady. In my mind, it was a slam dunk case. Okay. What I didn't realize, this is early on in my career, what I didn't realize is that the attorneys that the county hired, they had other ideas, and they're sharp, and they're good, and they're getting paid by the hour.
Right. With an endless funds account.
Right. So we ended up going to a court ordered mediation towards the end of the case right before trial. And I'm like, we're going to trial. We're going to kick some butt.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get 7 figures, 8 figures, whatever. And the mediator was a judge. I had appeared in front of him over the years. He was a retired federal judge, um, sharp as a cookie. Um, you know, he asked me, in talking to both sides, he goes, did you know your client had a conviction, a criminal conviction? And I go, no, my client never told me that. Right? We're 80% into the case. The criminal conviction didn't have anything to do with child abuse. Okay? It didn't have anything to do with the case. She, maybe 10 years before, as a young woman, was dating a guy who allegedly was a drug dealer. They got stopped, and there was drugs in the car. And he, being the stand-up guy he was, said, "Oh, it's her drugs."
Nice man.
So she ends up getting a conviction. Okay? Didn't have anything to do with the case. CPS never said anything about drug use by this lady. And I had a long talk with that very experienced federal judge. And he told me, he said, "Vince, if the jury hears that your client is a convicted felon, they're not going to care what happened to her. They're going to discount her case."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "But wait a minute. It has nothing to do with what's going on." He says, "I don't care." He says, "I've done hundreds, thousands of these cases, right? You better listen to me." So luckily, I had someone on my team who was a former judge himself. Okay. I call him up and I say, "Bob, this is the situation, blah, 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 blah." He says, "Wait." He says, "Wait just a minute." He says, "I'm downtown. I'm going to come by." And he came by the mediation. And, we had, because it's an all day thing, we talked for about an hour. And he works for me. He goes, "Vince," he goes, "Look," he goes, "I've done hundreds of trials as an attorney, as a judge. If this gal has a conviction, it's going to discount the case." And I said, "Well, Bob, it has nothing to do with the case." "Vince, I'm just telling you the facts of life. 12 random men and women aren't going to feel good about giving a lot of money to this lady."
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if you've ever been on a jury, Georgette or Darren, but, people are people. They
Mm-hmm.
think certain things. They have their own prejudices. They have their own, issues with other people.
Did you find that after the whole pandemic thing that the juries were differently? How's what I'm trying to say? Were people different? Like before, you could be able to figure out a jury being an attorney, and you had a standard somewhat of like how people were. But was after people were locked in and shut in, did it seem like their attitudes and it was a little bit unpredictable, or maybe a little bit more? Were the juries different after people got let out of their cages after the pandemic than they were prior to? Was there like more animosity or pent up aggression, or Any of that?
I think so, but one of the hardest things to do for attorneys, I didn't have to do this, but was trying to do a jury trial on Zoom. One of the
Right.
key things that Jerry Spence taught was you got to make a connection with your juror. Making a connection on Zoom is a lot different than
Right.
making a connection in person.
Well, I mean, you're part of that job.
Mm.
It's almost a show, right? You're showing the jury. You're trying to
Right,
present a case with
right,
intensity and tenacity and all this stuff, and you
right.
can't do that through a unless you're Tom Cruise or something.
A few years ago, I did a case, a jury trial in Los Angeles County, and I can tell you that I would not have won unless I was able to make a connection with the jurors. As a matter of fact, going into the closing argument, I knew I had 6 of the jurors. I knew that I had them, and they were going to vote for me. The problem was I didn't have the other 6. And there's a lot of ways that, Spence teaches you how to make this assessment. But anyway, so in the closing argument, I focused specifically just on those 6 people. 85% of my closing argument was to those people. And it was all about, interesting thing is, it's all about making a connection with a
Mm-hmm.
person. It's all about forming that relationship.
Right. You can get eye contact. You can look at them. You can see
Mm-hmm.
their movements. And
One of the things, and I found this fascinating when I went to training with Jerry Spence. They would have this exercise where they'd put 12 people in a box, in a jury box, and then someone had to give a closing argument in another language, a language you didn't understand. You
What?
talk about, yeah, you
But
talk
how
about,
is that possible, though? I mean, how are they going to understand?
Miss G, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm telling you right now, there is a trial consultant in California. I think he's still in California, that does a lot of work, or used to, with the Trial Lawyers College. His name is Josh. I think his last name is Carton. Josh Carton. And he's a communication expert, jury consultant, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And when I first saw him and met him, I thought it was all bullshit. I really did. Just like you think that's not possible. But after watching and learning, it's fascinating. So they would make people who could speak a second language. I didn't. I was always in the jury. I never, because I can't speak a second language unless you want to include Ebonics. But I couldn't. I didn't do Spanish. I didn't do Russian. I didn't do Persian or any foreign language. But to watch a lawyer be trained to give a closing argument in, say, Russian to 12 people that don't speak Russian, you come to realize that your ability to communicate, it's not the words. And that's hard to do on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Easier to do in person if you've been trained that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, doing something on Zoom, I mean, it's okay, but it's not the best. If you're the plaintiff and you're trying to prove that your client's civil rights were violated, because you get all kinds of people on the jury.
I've
You
seen
know,
you in action on Zoom, though. You did pretty damn good.
Here's something interesting. You don't know this, but I took several courses on how to be an effective litigator on Zoom.
Okay, yeah, I knew it. There's something because you were
I
damn good.
I didn't wake up with that skill.
I see. Okay.
So you have to be trained, and you have to continue the training. You have to continue the learning.
Mm-hmm.
But
But
anyway,
you're my mentor, so you're gonna train me and all that, right?
going back, to these civil rights cases, they are not as easy as you think. They're not. And
Well, no, they've been defended that whole time. You got all kinds of defenses
Yeah.
against the things where you think it's easy or changing laws.
Right.
And
First, to start out with, and I think most, if not all, but definitely here in California,
Mhm.
social workers have immunity, have something called qualified immunity. Now, there's three types of immunity. Okay, so they have qualified immunity. How do you sue a person who can't be sued? Now,
Now, is that what's qualified immunity? What's the definition for qualified immunity?
okay, good question. Qualified immunity means you can't sue them unless you can prove malice or fraud. It's not simple negligence. Social workers are negligent every day, all day. But if they're negligent, you can't sue them. So, for example, Darren, if I'm driving down the street and I run into you at the stop sign by accident, accident means negligence. I can sue you. You can sue me because I don't have immunity. All right. If I had qualified immunity, you couldn't sue me unless you proved that I intentionally ran into you, that I was trying to hurt you in your car. Think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the hurdles you have to get over to prove something like that.
All right.
And that's what you have to do with social workers. Now, luckily for a lot of people, what social workers do, sometimes it's not as hard as you think about malice or fraud. One of the issues when you prove a social worker is lying about something, intentionally lying, that erases immunity, qualified immunity. There's a video that's been around YouTube um, about a lawyer from representing Orange County here in California arguing to the Court of Appeals that social workers should have immunity even if they lie to the court. Lied to the court, not to the parent, but lied to the
Yeah.
court. She was basically laughed out of the courtroom by the judges. Laughed out. I mean, and you could tell she wasn't a very experienced attorney because no experienced attorney would ever go into a courtroom and argue something like that. And
Argue something like what? I'm not understanding that
w-
part.
she argued that even though the social worker lied in court to the judge, that the parents shouldn't be able to sue her.
Oh,
No,
So what
just
are some of what's
just
the
the
you said that
statement.
there's three
but
you said
that's a wait, Darren. That's a we're talking about a CPS attorney, right? That did that.
No, no, it was a law firm representing CPS and the lawyers. Excuse me, and the social workers. It was a private law firm.
Mm.
And some senior partner gave
Mhm,
her the assignment to
mhm.
go into court and try to convince three very experienced judges, appellate judges, that it's okay for social workers to lie under oath.
Oh yes, I saw that. That's all over YouTube, by the way, too.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't before, but
yeah.
yeah,
It is. It is.
it is now. Yeah, I saw that actually.
So
That's weird.
can you imagine that you're trying to tell three judges that, but it's okay if your client lies to the judge. Uh, they shouldn't be sued.
Right.
That's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. But anyway, to get back to Darren's question,
Hmm.
that's what qualified immunity. Now, there's something called um, absolute immunity. Okay, absolute immunity means even if I wanted to wreck your car and to hurt you at the stop sign, you can't sue me at all. That's just the step above qualified immunity. Now, here, we were talking about this the other day. I'm gonna connect something up with you guys and make you think about this. Do you know why we have immunity? Because of economic reasons. We gave social workers qualified immunity because they were getting sued left and right for negligence. And the states said, look, we're losing money. we got to cut down on these lawsuits with these crazy social workers. So, and I think it was about 1989, somewhere around there. Well, shortly before that, Washington, the state of Washington, had passed a law that you couldn't sue social workers even if they screwed up negligently, that it had to be malice or fraud, and gave them qualified immunity. Well, that was such an a new way of looking at it. People became outraged, and a case made it all the way from Washington all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. I just knew that the Supreme Court of the United States would vote that qualified immunity was unconstitutional. I mean, I knew it. I mean, why would we give social workers who are destroying families qualified immunity? What I didn't realize is the economic impact of these lawsuits on the state and on the county.
That's it. It's money. It's all
Of
about
course.
money. They're afraid to lose the money.
I told you Economic Analysis of the Law is a book you're going to have to read your first year of law school.
So they just flipped the script then. So now they turn neglect onto the people, and then they can take more kids and they protect themselves under the same laws that they built up to protect themselves.
So look, the Supreme Court decided 5-4, one vote, 5-4, that it is constitutional if a state wants to give their social workers qualified immunity. Guess what every state did? They gave all their social workers qualified immunity.
Yep.
Not because they didn't think social workers were doing wrong. It was because we're going to save $100 million this year, and we can use that money elsewhere
and take more kids. We'll have more case workers that are out there working.
Well, we can take that $100 million and we can build more freeways, more roads, help the homeless, free medical services, blah blah blah, more police, blah 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 blah. Why should we give, Miss G $5 million because she got screwed over by a social worker? F Miss G. It's one of those things in philosophy. Do you help one person or do you help many people?
That's where you get on that surety bond too, right? So they were getting so sued that they were starting to probably get their coverages taken away, right? Like they weren't even being able to insure these people.
Well, now it's becoming a big question, because a big problem for them, for counties like LA, because the social workers do, even with qualified immunity, they're losing millions and millions of dollars every year.
They have partial qualified immunity in LA County, not full.
I said qualified immunity is what they have. And because they do things that are with malice or lie or with fraud, the county ends up losing, millions of dollars every year. I don't know if they did it in recent years, but there was at one point, the LA Times would do an article every year about how much money the county is losing on the sheriff department being sued, and because they have qualified immunity as well, and on social workers being sued. And the Times was saying it's just too much money for the taxpayers. You have to reform the sheriff's department and social services, or DCFS. Did that ever happen? No.
Why don't they make it where they just return the children back when the social worker is lying?
Why not
can't it be like that? That's like, this is like the souls of the family that children are. This is ridiculous, though.
Miss G, first of all, they don't come to court and say we're taking your kids because we're lying.
But
it's very, it's very subtle, and it's very, it's camouflaged.
That's why they're sociopathic assholes. That's why.
And because we make money when we take kids. Why would we stop that?
I tell everybody up here in Maine, every time you get those little stimulus checks, thank a family that just lost their kid, because if you look at them balancing budgets, if the state of Maine, they balance the budget every year, it seems it's getting greater, and then there's a surplus, but the kids that are getting taken are more and more and more and more. It went from 18% to 24%, 26%, and all of a sudden we're giving out stimulus checks.
The White House knows about it too.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what's the last immunity? You said there's 3 of them.
There's something called transactional immunity, and they don't have transactional immunity in well, at least in my state, California. So the two you have to really be concerned about is the absolute immunity and the qualified immunity. And social workers in my state enjoy qualified immunity.
Enjoy it. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, they do enjoy it, because if they didn't, they'd be sued
Yeah,
every day.
You know, this
they
is
should
why
be, rightfully
social
so.
workers would say you cannot touch me. I'm
Right.
untouchable.
Exactly.
Oh, and then you know what they do also, Vincent? I've never told you this. But in my situation, she told me in the courtroom that she's going to lie purposely on the stand. I swear on the Holy Bible as God is my witness, and I put that in every bit of my soul. She said that to me in the courtroom, Monterey Park.
They
She said,
don't care.
I am
They're
going to
beasts. I mean,
lie
you know they're devils.
on purpose. Wait there
Yeah.
and let me finish. I'm going to lie on purpose. You're not going to see your kids again. And then I said, I am going to sue you. And she was the supervisor. She looked at me, laughed at me in front of the other person's aunt in the hallway of the courtroom, and she said, "You try. I am untouchable." And then she
Mhm.
went like this, walked away. She turned around, laughed at me, and of course, the aunt, you know her, she got hot, heated up for seeing that. She
Yeah.
tried to tell the attorney that she said this. The attorney is saying, "Well, what can we do? We
You know,
can't do anything."
I've heard that type of story from hundreds and hundreds of people.
But it does happen, Vincent. It
Oh,
does. That's why
it
I
does.
believe them.
I,
That's why
I,
I believe them.
I believe it too. I believe it too. But I don't know if you guys remember this, but when that African American guy was killed, there was by the cop kneeling on his neck. There was a
George
big,
Floyd.
yeah, George Floyd. There was a big movement in the country to take away qualified immunity from police officers, right? Um, Not that they needed that in that particular case, but just in general. But I always thought, you got to take the qualified immunity away from the social workers. But in my lifetime, I don't think that'll ever happen because there's too much money involved
The
for the
state is
state,
so used to it. The state
the
is so
state,
used to the money coming in,
the
Vincent.
states and the counties
Mhm.
couldn't afford it. I mean, because social workers are, you know, careless, and they use their personal feelings sometimes to get at a family
No, no,
or
no, no.
to
They
get
use their
back.
personal feelings all the time, Vincent. There is no
Right,
sometimes.
right, on all the cases that we hear about. But so I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, unfortunately. But Darren, this is what I've been leading all of this up to, and it's taken me 43 minutes to do it. Darren, I have to stop talking about what we can do, and I have to start doing it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I can't do it by myself. So if we have to go state by state, county by county, we're going to do it. And Darren, if you are interested in joining us, we need a captain for the state of Maine.
You
He
know I'm
knows.
there.
He
Okay.
knows I told him, but we need to work on it and not talk about it too much.
It has to be a concerted effort,
Mm-hmm.
because if we are able to organize and use the internet and use computers and use social media, we can have a significant impact on what the laws will be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Significant.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
the one thing you and I have that the county doesn't have, we have votes.
Mm-hmm.
And unless they're going to change this somehow, some way, votes count. We don't have the money to hire lobbyists to go to Sacramento or go to DC or wherever your state capital is. We don't have that kind of money, okay, to influence politicians.
We
Right?
have the people though.
We have votes,
Mm-hmm.
and if you could get a block of even 100,000 people together
Mm-hmm.
to vote on an issue. Now, here's the problem, and this is what they count on. I've actually heard this said. All of us, just the three of us, we have different interests politically. We have to learn to unite on this one issue, CPS.
Yep.
Look, you and I have a difference of opinion about who should be president. We probably have a different issue on many different opinion on many issues. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. We have the same on CPS, and we have to rally around that one issue,
That's it.
make the change.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, there's enough of us. There's enough of us affected that if we
Well,
start to just see it moving forward, is this? You're right. It's time to stop talking and start a little less conversation, a little more action.
and here's the thing. One of the things they count on, those in power, is that we can never organize the
Correct.
vote. They count on that.
That's right.
Because they're
Because that's
afraid.
what.
People are afraid. Listen, Davis, I already arranged all that last year. Everybody backed off at the last minute, and Darren knows that. I told Darren that. I hope he remembers that. They backed off at the last minute because the social worker told them that if they do that, they're not going to see their kids. Well, guess what? You're not going to see your kids either way.
Well, you know what? One of the things is there are enough former victims of CPS that we
Mhm.
don't have to rely on current victims to get organized, because when the
Right.
current victims go in the ballot box, nobody's going to know how they vote. You know,
Hmm.
I think I mentioned this before, and I think it's still legal. When I was growing up in Los Angeles, I grew up in an African American community, and every time there was an election that came up, there was a card, a large postcard that was mailed to my house. Now I wasn't voting; it was for my grandparents, but it basically told them what to vote for each office, for each judge,
Hmm.
for state, county, federal, who to vote for. Without exception, my grandfather and my grandmother voted the way that card said.
What?
Without exception. They didn't know all of the issues. They didn't care to know all of the issues.
Wow.
They just knew that, some politician or group who they wanted to follow said to vote this way. And they voted that way.
Wow.
Think about it. Was that smart? Was it dumb?
It was dumb.
No,
This is
it wasn't.
genius.
It was genius.
Okay, well, shit.
You know what came out of that? I'm going to tell you what came out of that. Because this started in the early 60s, maybe before, but when I became aware of it, because I used to look at the mail every day. What came out of that was a surgence of African Americans being elected to office. Why?
Hmm.
Because they organized the vote.
Just like when they send the buses to pick the people up to go vote for certain candidates, they tell them
Right.
the same thing, right?
Now, guess what? I don't know if either one of you know this or remember this. You might have been too young, or you might have not been in LA at the time. I forget what year it was. Might have been the 70s or late 60s even.
Vincent, how old do you
No,
think I am? I am older than you think. Never mind. Just I was here in the 70s, Vincent.
okay. Do you remember the first black mayor in Los Angeles?
I do remember my father actually liked him. I don't remember his name though.
He was an ex-policeman, LAPD police officer, and his name was Tom Bradley. Without that postcard telling people who to vote for him,
You would never.
he never becomes mayor. There was no internet. There was barely, 10 channels on TV. There was no cable.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
How do you mobilize a bunch of people that you can't even communicate with?
But now they're spreading lies about people on the internet, and people are actually believing it. And
And people will always believe it.
But
That
that's
that
why we're
is
in this situation, Vincent, because they're so dumb.
no. What you have to do is you have to organize. I talked about this before. In California, we have a very liberal governor, and California is a Democratic state.
Not anymore.
A few years ago, they tried to recall the governor.
Mm.
Okay. Now, there was no way that this was going to work. But what they didn't think was they didn't think that people would sign the petitions to get the recall on the ballot. And they did it. Now, when the ballot election came up, they lost, you know, horrifically. But I don't think they ever thought they were going to win. But they made a statement by getting it on the ballot, by getting enough people together. And I've actually talked to those two guys because at the time I was at ABC Radio. They had a show that was, I think, right before my show. And in the old days, before COVID, you'd always go into the show and you'd meet people. I always had the impression that these guys were doing this to make a statement, which they did, and to show how the internet could be used to organize people at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, at the neighborhood level. These dudes had put a strategy to go down to the neighborhoods to organize to get signatures on the ballot to recall our governor.
I did that.
Okay. So think about the lesson that they did. Now, one of the things was they had a fascinating website, and I copied the website. I had my IT guy copy it just because we wanted to know how they were integrating everything, right? It's out there in the public domain. If we use something like that to organize people, I think that it would work. It would
That's
work
what.
from state to state, county to
Mhm.
county, city to city. It will work across the country. I mean, and how do we send letters? We don't mail letters anymore. We send our congressmen emails.
Mhm. You
That's
send them a
free.
tweet, or right.
Yeah, that's
A
all
tweet.
free.
Yeah, right. A tweet.
So the internet is a powerful tool, and we need to learn how to use it to
So that's why
implement some change.
that's that's why I started that abolishcps.com site. I'm trying to get all these rogue groups together so that we can become one and send the same message instead of 1,000 different messages.
That,
And we
that
need the lawyers that want to be there, and everybody come together to be in a spot and go out as a powerhouse and stop trying to be mom and pop's little shops. It's not enough. It's great and it's wonderful, but you need to be part of something large. That's it. And that's, like we always say, Miss G, we need a face, and it's either you got to be you or Mr. D. One of you two need to grab a hold of this cash cow and
Okay,
bring the
well, the
reins down.
face is me and you, and Davis is our, he's,
Right.
I guess, the king, you want to call him, but like it didn't come out of my mouth right. It was about, when I said king, it was about it was
look,
a,
look,
Yeah.
you,
oh,
look, you need to genuflect and bow down when you say that.
Kiss the ring.
I'm gonna have to buy him a ring so I can kiss it for him. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That will never happen. But guys, if you guys need to be part of the team in your state, um, contact me. Why contact you, Vincent?
No, I was just talking to one person in Montana.
Okay.
Okay,
Anyway,
but if you're interested, contact Miss G.
yeah, because and Darren,
GAT at vincentwdavis.com.
yeah, GAT@vincentwdavis.com. We need to get Darren an email too.
Oh, you can get it. All you need is from Yasmin.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell Yasmin. Darren, I'm gonna get you an office email just for you.
Woo! Look at all. I got a phone number, a real email address, and the number right to the king.
Really? Is the king got you that opportunity too? The king didn't even know your ass.
Hey, listen,
There was something about Darren that I knew I liked.
Yeah, asshole. That's why.
Miss G, I would never forget where I came from. I
Shut
don't
up,
forget my
Darren.
roots.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Miss G.
I'm going to send you on a nice vacation when him and I are really successful.
Yeah, I can only imagine where that nice vacation is, Darren Way. Or like Vincent called you Darren Gay. I'm
Hey,
gonna
I'm
stick
happy.
to the
I'm
gay part.
happy. I am
He
very
said
happy.
Darren Gay. Yeah, I'm gonna stick to the gay part. I'm like, oh, you mean Darren Gay? I'm gonna tell you his name. His name is Darren Gay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that
All
means
right.
gay
You're
means
gonna put
happy.
it gay at VincentWDavis.com.
Oh, dude, you should. Yep.
I'm gonna get you then. It's gonna
You,
be gay at
you,
VincentWDavis.com.
I will love. Do you know what? You know what that's going to do? That's going to bring so many more people to my calling. So you just fixed me up even
Right.
bigger.
Hey, Darren,
Miss
there's
G's
no
just
bad.
stepping in your own.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey,
Here we go. I
Darren.
got it all now.
Darren, do you know who said there's no bad publicity? There's no such thing as bad publicity.
No, I do not. But I love that saying.
It was Barnum and Bailey.
Oh
Was it
damn.
really?
Hmm.
When
There's no
did you
such
say that?
there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Right. Yep. As long as you're getting it, that's all that
Right.
matters.
As long as you are in the forefront of that person's mind or subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Even smear campaigns against a person that's actually doing good in life and helping people is also a promotion to you for you as well.
Yeah.
Did you guys know
Stay
that?
tuned. Stay
You know,
tuned for Gay and the Gang.
there's some theories about psychology and publicity, and if your publicity is 100% favorable, people become suspicious.
I mean, Hitler mastered that stuff. Hitler
Right.
mastered the art of putting up propaganda and, sucking people in. He drew some cartoons and made a cool logo. And I mean, he sucked people right in, and that was it.
I was looking at the news today, these news shows, and it looks like that the presidential election is going to be Biden versus Trump. 50% of the people in this country don't like Donald Trump. 50% of the people in this country don't like Joe Biden.
No, actually, it's less than that now. 20%.
Yeah, do you think those numbers are accurate?
27%.
I'm
That's it.
talking about from the last voting.
Yeah, we're talking about, but this is the here and now, though.
Right. Biden got the most votes ever, did he not? He got the most votes in an election last.
Yeah, well, that's why he won. But
I don't mean like that. I mean, like in history, he got the most votes.
But what I'm trying to tell you is, no matter what, you will always have your detractors.
Yeah.
You will always have people that don't like you, and for different reasons.
What is she talking about?
For different reasons.
I don't have your message, Misty. I don't have a message from you. Nothing. I got no messages from you. Nothing. So I'm not sure why you keep asking me to reply to your message.
Misty, if you need to contact Georgette, text her again, and we're about to end the show so she can contact you directly. Listen,
I'm getting a phone call. This thing isn't going to be off, and she's calling me. You know that. My ear is getting ready right now. It's burning. I can feel it.
All right. Listen, we have to go. We're way past our time. We're over time. I want to thank you, Miss G, for being on this today, this Sunday morning. And Darren, I want to thank you as well.
Yes, sir.
You guys have a good rest of the day, good rest of the Sunday. And we'll see everyone tomorrow and this week at 7 p.m. Pacific time.
And don't forget our shows at 1 o'clock, Thursdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's my show with Darren Gway. So,
okay. You also have another show, don't you, Miss G?
The prayer show at 8 o'clock. It's on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time.
That one gets a lot of people, too. A lot of people like that.
Mm-hmm. I do. I've noticed that, too.
One of the things, I don't know if Grace told you that, but that prayer show is watched a lot recorded.
Is it really? Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't watch it live.
Right.
But a lot of people watch it, recorded.
Yeah, because I used to do that.
There's that thing. Did she tell you about that vidIQ?
Which one?
Did you tell Mr. Davis about that watcher, the vidIQ thing?
No, she's never mentioned vidIQ to me.
You should check it out, because what it does is it breaks down your show, and it's free. And every episode you have and every show of everything that you have, it has who's watched, how many times, when they watch it after the show. It's really cool.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
send it to Vincent.
Maybe she'll send along those other things.
I knew that was coming.
You know what? That's
I'm in so much trouble, Mr. Davis. Thank you so much.
you guys are like literally suck. I hate both of you now. I used to love you, Darren, for 5 years. Now I'm like, okay, Darren, you keep
2
it up.
minutes, 1 hour with the king, and it's all over.
I hate you forever now.
I've blessed you, Darren. Go in peace. All right, folks. Goodbye. Have a good rest of the day.
Have a good one. I'm going to the dump.